Hi, this video is for Paul R. Spitzeri. This is Doug Sperling. It is July 12, 2020, about 7 p.m. Pacific time. I've introduced myself already in an email. I'm going to show you a couple of kinds of things. Some map evidence of Los Angeles and independence as it existed, as it was in fact constructed. Some other types of map evidence that, if they are available for Los Angeles and independence, it will reveal a lot about some parts of the project that I can't map well or don't understand well geospatially right now. And then I've got a couple of specific questions for you at the end. Map evidence. Let's look at some valuation maps. Here, I'm going to turn everything off in here, and then we'll just turn on this valuation map. This is a map produced by Southern Pacific Company, Transportation Company Engineering Department in, I believe, 1978. It's a valuation map. It was filed with Interstate Commerce Commission in Washington, D.C. So this is part of the public domain, the public record. And it was filed to explain the company's real estate and infrastructure holdings, and it discusses in a ton of survey grade detail the real estate history of Southern Pacific in Santa Monica. I georeferenced this by comparing elements in the map to elements in the aerial image, really mostly streets and other things. And then what's left is that we have information about the specific location of Los Angeles and Independence facilities. There we go. Original track center line of LAIRR. That's Los Angeles and Independence. So there we go. That kind of information is what's on here. And a much earlier valuation map. The valuation program began in, I think, 1915 or something, 1916. This is a much earlier map. It is, the date field is not filled in. It's probably from about 1920. It shows, so there were no freeways or anything like that. It's interesting, though, because it does show the way Los Angeles and Independence facilities became part of the 1890s Port Los Angeles development over here. Part of the approach right away. Okay, so those are two kinds of maps. Sanborn maps are very important for understanding where Los Angeles and Independence was. The 1880 map, 1888 series, is the only one that shows the original depot at 4th, 5th, San Pedro. And it also shows the Southern Pacific approach track. The subsequent, the depot burned in later in 1888, I think October, and so on subsequent editions, it's not there. These maps are not available from Library of Congress right now in their color scans. You can see tower mentioned, and the classic photo that we all see. Included in your article on page 48, for example, was probably taken from about here, pointing this direction, maybe a little closer here, pointing this direction at the towers. So that was the terminal. That's another kind of map evidence that shows Los Angeles and Independence. A third kind was corporate promotional documents. This is from Library of Congress. This is a little index thing that I have, citation thing that I have built. So this is whose map this was, who printed it, and what the title was, 1875, and that's where it is, Library of Congress. What this map shows us, well, a couple of things. We got a plan view and a perspective view, and in the plan view you can see Los Angeles and Independence labeled, and here's the road to Panamint City, and Shermantown, obviously named after the senator. They were planning a mining and concentration works over here. And then we've got a perspective view. This was obviously a promotional tool. And there's a train going to the station at the foot of Surprise Canyon leading to Panamint City. So that's another kind of map evidence. A couple additional types of map evidence I want to make you aware of. These are different classes or kinds of map evidence, and at this moment I'm searching for these for Los Angeles and Independence. And part of the reason for this video is to ask you if you know of these classes or types or sorts of information for Los Angeles and Independence. What is this? These are at Stanford. This is Theodore Judas. He was the chief engineer of Central Pacific. This is from October 10th, 1861. There's Leland Stanford's signature. He was the president at the time, and this is the map of their proposed Central Pacific alignment over Donner Pass. There are, I think, 7 or 8 sheets or something. The reason this is important to me is not for the map. The important information here is actually this map data presented in tabular form. It's called a table of alignments, and it looks like this. It's basically a set of instructions for starting here, pointing starting at a given spot, point of beginning, going a certain distance in a certain direction, and then turning a certain amount a certain way, and then going straight from that point, and then turning from that point for a certain distance, etc. And in survey software, you can recreate the line precisely using this information, and it is this is gold. This is actually better than a map in a lot of ways. So this can be contained just in a notebook. Let's look at that. I've got from, I think, the National Archives here in my downloads. I've got a shortcut to some notebooks. These are engineers' notebooks, so you can see what these are like. These are the notebooks. These are original Central Pacific. I'm sorry, these are Union Pacific notebooks. No, these are Central Pacific notebooks. Congress sent out a Sidney Clark. There's mentioned. He was president of Union Pacific at the time, October 12th, 1876. So they went back through and remeasured stuff. But this is the real information that tells us where the line is on the ground. This is better than a map, more precise, and you can use this actually to draw a very accurate map. So these are, that's what an engineer's notebook looks like. Let's look at the cover. Well, there's a lot of stuff in there. Let's go up and look at the cover. So you can see what this is. Notebook number 1, Sacramento to Hot Springs, Nevada, W.H. Hauer. And that's an engineer's notebook. So if you know of or have seen anything like that, that would have real data from the survey that we're given to understand in your article. The survey that Crawford made, he made a reconnaissance survey at least this far, and then you mentioned that he also made a location survey or an alignment survey, and that would be information about that would be very valuable. That would take 2 forms. It would either take a map, the form of a map, something like this, or a set of maps probably, or it would take the form of notebooks like I just showed you. And those would have the information that would let a person skilled in engineering or surveying tell us exactly where this line went. If none of those sources prove in the end to be available at all, and I'm in the process of digging through various collections, California State Archive, various, it's unclear what name the items might be under if they in fact exist. That's a real complication. Anyway, so the kind of information I'm ultimately after is the kind of information that would let us understand cartographically or geospatially, hopefully with a lot of precision, what Los Angeles and Independence was actually planning. Now we know from precisely on the ground. We know this within, a few feet. All of this is known. Um, this is known with a little less precision at this point, but within some feet. I don't. There's some guesswork in here. What exactly was the relationship of the alignment of San Pedro in 1875 to the current day alignment? This is as current day from property boundary to property boundary. This is 100.0 feet, so that's a very wide street, as a lot of city streets go. Um, it was common that a rail line that was granted a right-of-way in the public, that was granted rights in the public right-of-way, was not necessarily aligned up the center of that right-of-way. It was pretty common, and I've showed it this way. This is a guess on my part. I've showed it so they had a working 2 lanes of street, and then the thing was over, sort of at the edge. Then the property line possibly was here, but anyway, that's a guess on my part. That is not known. And then about here, they entered private right-of-way apparently. But it would be nice to know more about this. It would be, you mentioned that 8 miles of grading were actually completed. It would be very helpful to me to be able to understand where that was. I drew a red line. That's 8 miles lands us out here by San Gabriel Mission, I guess. But it's not clear to me from your article or from any other source that they would have come this way. The 2 other possible ways were the way that they were initially planning, I guess, or that it was initially assumed they would go, which is up Arroyo Seco and then past Santa Anita, and then on through the San Gabriel Valley and presumably this way. And then the other possibility would be to swing south of East Los Angeles and through the Gap, right there, and then head out east. So if you know anything that would help me zero in on sort of where this is, this can be found, information about this can be found, but it's arduous. If there's no actual cartographic information, I'll show you what I mean by arduous. I'm going to light up this file right here, and we're going to look quickly. These are a set of maps produced and distributed about 10 years ago by San Mateo County Department of Public Works, and a person at San Mateo County Department of Public Works became very interested in the Ocean Shore Railroad, and that person combed through 100 years of real estate records and produced. And if you dig back through the various deeds from from grantee to grantor property over and over until you get back to the corporation or the owner that you care about, you then have a precise description of that property, that owner's property, relative to current day stuff, all the stuff that came after current day stuff. And so this map, this series of maps, shows what that person at San Mateo County Department of Public Works found, and we can put a little fade on this to see what that shows us, what they found, and you could still see the tunnel portal is collapsed here, but this is what they found. They found all these. This is out by Pedro Point, near San Francisco. So, and this tells the the exact situation of this property. So this can be found with great precision in a current day environment. This can be done, but it's a vast amount. It can be done for Los Angeles and Independence. It's a vast amount of research. Each of these parcels, you start with an existing parcel near where you think the topic of interest is, and you dig back through the deeds one after another until you get to the one that you want, and then you start looking at the neighbors. It's a lot of work, which is why it hasn't been done. But the information about precisely where they graded and what they own does exist. It's in the public record, unless the records were destroyed, which I don't believe they were in this case. Many in San Francisco were in 1906. Many records were destroyed, but I believe in Los Angeles the real estate records are intact, and so potentially that information could be found. But the much quicker way is if somebody drew a map or made a verbal description, and then we can just tell, oh, they would have gone out Valley Boulevard like Southern Pacific later did. Okay. Similarly, I would like to find out with more precision um, where the tunnel in Cajon Pass was exactly projected to be. Let's back up a little here. Santa Fe came up the wash to about here, and then started powering across these foothills in a series of cuts and fills at a very steep grade, about 3%. So the canyon gets much steeper right about here. Subsequently, they built a lower grade line, and there is an area called Pine Lodge right here. It's a historic area now. Nobody knows where that is now, but it's about here. And so the tunnel, the 3,000-foot tunnel, of which about 1/6 or about 500 feet were completed per your article, and I've seen that in a couple other sources too. Might have been somewhere up here, and the idea, since the canyon gets much steeper right here, beginning right about here, the idea might have been that they climbed low on the canyon wall up into here, and then wanted to circle back and felt like they needed a tunnel to get through. These are called the Mormon Rocks, and they're really prominent in a lot of photographs, a lot of railfan photographs of Cajon Pass. So that may or may not be the location of the tunnel, was to get through this. And if so, there are 300 feet or so of ruined, abandoned tunnel from the 1870s up there, and I have to wonder if somebody doesn't know where that is, or if you've ever seen cartographic evidence or engineers' notebooks, or the survey, or if you know where Crawford's surveys are, or if they still exist, or any documentation of them. That would be super helpful and interesting to me. Again, this is my guess of one possible line. There are really not a lot of great ways between these endpoints. There's York, where Union Pacific was in 1877. There's Los Angeles, where Los Angeles and Independence was as of the sale date, 1877. So, beginning 1874, 75, and continuing until the sale date, there was a constant talk of linking up with Union Pacific, possibly this way. I wonder if you have seen anything that describes that in more detail, or possibly something closer to the line that was actually built, which would take them much further away from the Panamint properties, but around 1903, 1905, Union Pacific and Senator Clark of Montana, hooked up to build a line about like this, the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake, and they built up this whoops, I screwed that up, and then up through here like that. So they built a slightly longer line to Cajon Pass. Anyway, any documentation you have seen about the surveys, the extent of them, Crawford surveys, or any other reconnaissance surveys, that'd be really appreciated. Lastly, I guess I just want to take a moment to show you something of what can be done with Sanborn maps. I'm in the process. This is probably related to my graduate thesis. I am in the process of producing for a couple of different cities in the United States, geo-reference seamless Sanborn maps that can be looked at in various softwares, and you can use it to compare circumstances on the ground in past times to circumstances now in past times. And this will be interesting to you because Los Angeles is one of the areas of interest for me. So this work is analogous work to what I'm going to show you right now is ongoing for Los Angeles. and it does reveal something about Los Angeles and independence, and also about um, many other topics related to architecture, transportation, land use, urban planning, development, etc. The history of that in your area of interest, Los Angeles. So this work is underway. Um, anyway, let's look at this. Here's what a georeferenced Sanborn map looks like. It's a this is a very early stage in producing a much cleaner looking um, product. But this is the Potrero Point area, and I'm going to apply a little fade so that we can sort of see some of the relationships between long gone stuff and stuff that's there now. You can see the famous rope walk, 1,500 feet long, sort of dominates the real estate history of this area. You can see that in the map. There's all kinds of neat things in here. Anyway, Klaus Spreckels, where did he park his private car? That's the answer to that question. Right there, that was where his private rail car sat. And there's other interesting things in here. There's a tannery. Here's the city and county of San Francisco's. There's their isolation ward. Smallpox. They had to keep the lepers separate, and of course, you could see that all kinds of separation were enforced at that time. And then a tannery nearby. Anyway, these maps are full of important, interesting detail about past situations and people and their relationships to current situations and people. Anyway, just want to make you aware that this similar thing is sort of in the early stages for Los Angeles, for your area. I think that pretty much covers it. I've shown you that Los Angeles and Independence, as I have it mapped in a lot of detail now. Los Angeles and Independence, the areas that I don't know much about and would like to know more. I can infer a little from your article and other sources, but I'd love to know more about what you know about sources. And then I've shown you a couple of the other kinds of source information, engineers' notebooks, etc., that might be used to answer some of these questions with a lot of precision geospatially. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching.